Welcome to the podcast. It's a Friday, and there is lots going on in and around NASCAR that we've got to get into. And Rod, let's start actually off the track. Some news. We had a story this week from you on Augusta Free Press. You, of course, also on Dickinson Media
hmm
about the latest in the court case involving the NASCAR charters, 2311 Racing Front Row Motorsports. Man, this could have some dramatic and immediate implications for those two race teams.
Yes, it could. This was one thing that kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting this in the least, but 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports could end up losing their charters and forced to compete as open teams as soon as next week when they go to Dover. So they're in Sonoma this week. So as they go to Dover, which is another Speedway Motorsports track, they stand the chance of losing that charter that they've had, or that working charter that they've had for so far, and they're going to have to race their way in to get into everything. So, even though there's this thing of 38 cars, 40 cars, whatever it might be, but 37, 38 cars, they may turn around and just say, hey, look, you're an open team. You've got to race your way into it just to be able to see if you can, compete in this race. It's just a mess because the way that this thing is going, Jeffrey Kessler said they're disappointed by the Court of Appeals to deny the request for a full rehearing. That's what they wanted out of this. They wanted a rehearing and a chance to kind of air some things out. And the decision has no bearing on the strength of our antitrust case, which they're still going to have. They're still going to have that coming up on December the 1st. But they're committed to racing this season as they continue to fight for more competitive and fair terms for all the teams to ensure the future of the sport and remain fully confident in our case. Now, Hamlin had made some comments, I think, on June 7th at Michigan, where he reaffirmed 2311's commitment to racing the season, even if they become an open team. So, as they stand right now, that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, if we get to that point of Dover next week, they could very well have it in there, unless something out of the clear blue, like an injunction, preventing them from doing that sort of thing. Because you know as well as I do, the legal process, it's one injunction appeal and injunction after another until somebody finally gets down to the nitty gritty and says, I've had enough with this.
Now, so this was a Court of Appeals ruling
Mm-hmm.
on the injunction from before. What this essentially says is that if there's no further action in this, and I don't imagine the Supreme Court's going to take this up with an immediate ruling, so
Right.
I think that's fair to say at this stage with the Supreme Court schedule, that's not likely. This means that the full December 1st case, and when I say December 1st, it's not going to be over and done in one day, certainly,
Right.
but a court case starting on December 1st that could take a while to get to a resolution would be the next phase in this.
Yeah, and I think it's another thing too. If Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, and the people at Front Row Motorsports thought that this was going to be an easy task, that if they started shaking enough pots and pans or whatever in the kitchen, thinking that they could go and rattle NASCAR out of this, they thought wrong. Because right now, it seems to be NASCAR has got, at least in one sense, the courts kind of on their side, and they're playing hardball. That's the way I look at it. It's a case of just out hardball.
And where we are right now, though, is still very much there's not been any hearing on either side's case is in terms of the merits. This
Right.
is just on the injunction, basically saying, 2311 in front row saying, hey, we want to be able to compete
hmm
as teams with those charter privileges until this is decided. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess for a while they were able to, for however long we are now, 6 months, 5 months into the season,
hmm
they've been able to. But I still don't know how to read how this will go in the court when it finally gets there in terms of the merits of both sides of the case.
Right.
And that said, yeah, NASCAR is not giving in. I mean, that's the thing here. I didn't expect NASCAR to give in. I also don't expect Michael Jordan to give in,
No.
especially. I mean, he's got Front Row Motorsports as well as part of the case, but I don't expect Michael Jordan, a guy who owned an NBA team, to just pack up and say, okay, we'll sign the charter. We're good.
Yeah, I don't expect that to happen either. And of course, just like what you said about the charter, this all stems from what happened late in the fall or in at least late summer and fall when all the teams were presented the new agreement and all of the teams signed it and they were given gosh it was a very short period of time to
48
look over
hours
the
or less, I
charter. I
think
mean,
it
it was
was.
something
Yeah.
like it was so many pages and it was unheard of. It would have taken I don't know how many hours or a couple of hours to get through it. And they went to the teams. Most of the teams, most every one of them signed it, including Hendrick signed it. Your bigger teams, they ended up signing all this, leaving Michael Jordan and them and Front Row Motorsports out there to say, no, we're not going to sign it. And then that's when NASCAR pretty much said, if you don't sign this, this is going to go and this is going to just make it harder on you. You're going to be an open team, and this is the way we're going to look at it. And they said, let the chips fall where they may. And that's where we're at right now with this.
Yeah, and it's not just that they have to theoretically compete for spots in races. As it's been mentioned, it's very rare that you would not get a spot in a race, but the money you get
Right.
for whatever position you finish in
The
is also
prize money, yeah,
prize
that's
money.
what I
Yeah,
was going to say. The prize money, you would suffer tremendously. And if you're a race team in this day and age, and you're trying to complete races, and you're trying to get part of that purse, and then you're cut, by ever how much is they're going to cut out of this purse. If you're an open team, that's going to put a hurt on you. And I know Michael Jordan's got money. Don't get me wrong. He's invested. He has played it smart and so forth. But Michael Jordan has said over and over, if this team doesn't turn some kind of profit or some kind of thing and produces results, he's going to get out of it. Now, that's just the way he is about it. We've kind of seen what happened with the Bobcats, what happened there with his investment into Charlotte. I don't know. Michael Jordan, it may force the hand. They may go to another racing series. It all this comes out and it makes me look at things and it's like, okay, Denny Hamlin's not ready to go to an IndyCar situation. Where else are they going to race NASCAR? They can't race NASCAR. There's nothing else like it. Hence, that's where I think that the antitrust suit might be able to, stand pat on that, and they could be able to prove that. I think they've got that going for them. But in the other regards of this whole thing, no, I just, I don't know where they can go. I don't know where they could go. You could be in protests like Tony Stewart when he kind of left NASCAR and, he's racing now, drag racing and so forth. I don't see that happening. So it's hard to tell what's really going to take place. And yeah, we've not even got to the December 1st trial date yet for this whole thing. And, I'm almost in one way. I'll just tell you, Chris, I think this is going to be one of those things of where I believe that 2311 and Front Row is going to actually bring up all the dirt that they possibly can in order to prove their point. And it may come back to the France family. It may come back to the way that Brian France ran things and stuff before he was unceremoniously booted after his little escapade up in New York there in the Hamptons. But it tells a lot of things right here, and I'm sure if the dirt comes out the way things are, it could be about as bad as what people predicted of Jeff Gordon and Brooke Gordon's divorce here several years ago. I mean, she threatened to bring the big dogs into the whole thing, and then Gordon finally agreed and said, well, let's make peace with this whole thing.
all you got to do is threaten to go through the discovery process.
Right.
If NASCAR has to open up its books.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be willing to do that, and maybe they're looking to see if 2311 and Front Row will blink first and just say, okay, we're good. But no, if the discovery process could not. You pointed it out. It might not be good for NASCAR. So that's the next stage. But in the meantime, yeah, there's the immediate implications, perhaps for. I mean, certainly whether they'll get spots in races, but it's just a matter of how much money they lose as a result of this for the next few
I
weeks.
I think also what goes with me on this, another thing that kind of stands out, they've not only asked NASCAR to open up their books, they have tried to get, and they're trying to get, if I'm not mistaken, Formula One to open up their books to show what they do and how they do things in the Formula One world. I don't know about IndyCar. I've not heard anything about, if there's any kind of talk with IndyCar. Of course, Roger Penske right now is trying more than anything else to probably keep IndyCar afloat with all the different things and the controversies that have gone on here in the past year. But yeah, they're asking Formula One to kind of present their books, and Formula One scratching their head and saying, "You're like comparing apples to oranges here when it comes to race teams." I don't know what you're getting at, but they're still just trying to prove how much control Formula One has over drivers and everything over in Europe, and the same way that NASCAR has this control, it seems like, over the drivers here in America.
So, some more off the track business news that impacts NASCAR. Let's talk about. All right, so the tradition in Martinsville involves a grandfather clock. We're gonna have to find somebody else apparently to make those grandfather clocks. What's the news there, Rod?
Yeah, well, this news broke this morning, and it concerned me because of the fact that it wasn't just the fact that they decided to quit. The company had Howard Miller. It's a Michigan-based company, but they have decided to just completely pull out, and they're going to be shutting down all of their operations. And if you don't know who I'm talking about with Howard Miller, they produce the grandfather clock that has been a trophy presented to the winner of the races when they go at Martinsville and they race there at Martinsville. It's been a little deal that's been dreamed up. I think Clay Earls was one of the first ones that kind of came up with this, and then Clay Campbell decided to take it on a little bit further. But it concerns me a whole lot when this company, Howard Miller, has said right now that they plan to cease operation by the end of 2025. They'll remain open in 2026 to sell off its remaining inventory. They're going to close down 2 facilities in Michigan and additional locations in Lexington and High Point, North Carolina. And they're facing closure because of a challenging housing market, escalating inflation, interest rates, and lo and behold, tariffs, thanks to President Donald Trump.
Yeah, the materials that go into it, I guess, are going to be exponentially increasing in price, so that makes it just impossible to make a profit in this environment. So congratulations there for
Yeah.
we lose some lose those locations, lose those employees, all that kind of thing. Okay, let's balance out that news with some good news
Yep.
about the Speedway Motorsports and MLB and the game coming up here. What, about 3 weeks?
Yep.
Cincinnati Reds, Atlanta Braves. What's the latest there with the game scheduled at the Bristol Motor Speedway?
Well, so far everything is on track. They had a meeting this past week. They interviewed the specific parties, Jerry Caldwell, also Murray Cook, and some of the other people involved with Speedway Motorsports, and they are on target right now, even though they've had some rain. The turf is down. The main thing is now getting the clay in and trying to balance that out and making sure that everything stays level with the way that they've packed all this stuff and they've put this turf down. The big thing now is getting bleachers put together, getting buildings put together, and so forth. And you're right, they have about 3 weeks left to go before this thing happens. And I'd say probably in the next, at least week and a half or 2 weeks, we'll start seeing some other movement, and that'll be outside the track. And because if you haven't seen renderings, and I'm going to be posting that a little bit later on, the renderings of what is coming for this. It's not going to be just a baseball game inside of Bristol Motor Speedway. This is going to be a total fan experience is what it's going to be. It's going to be like a country fair, circus type, atmosphere outside the track. MLB is going all out with this. They are designating the fan experience for Atlanta Braves fans, for Cincinnati Reds fans. They've gone all out with this, and you keep on questioning again, and we've brought this up and talked about it before. Where's the money coming from? Well, Speedway Motorsports, of course, is helping out. They've provided some talent, workers, and things like that to be able to make this happen. But Major League Baseball is the one that's really footing the bill on this, and they're looking for big things. I don't know how reliable this is just at this point, but they are expecting a near capacity crowd for where they're going to be at. And as a matter of fact, the local grocery store chain here in the area, Food City, for which the Food City 500 is named and so forth, they have now started a campaign for selling, I guess, what is remaining tickets that are available at a certain price to where you can still go to the Speedway Classic right before the playoffs happen with the racing in September. So they're tying this all together, and they're going to make an event out of it. And it sounds like it's going to be a first class event, and we're going to be seeing something between I don't know, how would we define this, kind of I wouldn't say they're mediocre, but the Reds are kind of like win 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5, and then they lose 1 or 2, but they haven't been swept all season. I know that they haven't been swept in any of the series, but they've got so many things going for them. Dela Cruz, of course, got named to the All-Star game. It's going to be next week. And of all things, UVA's Andrew Abbott, who came in pitching for Cincinnati, he got named to the All-Star team for next week also. So Cincinnati Reds have 2 big accomplishments on their table.
The Reds are at 48 and 46 right now, 7.5 back in the AL Central. That's a pretty loaded AL Central. They're in 4th place there. Cubs and Brewers playing pretty well. Cardinals have been playing well of late. The Braves have been a huge disappointment. They were a team that, maybe the Atlanta Braves and Baltimore Orioles, the 2 biggest disappointments in baseball this year, both projected to be playoff teams. Both are well out of the playoff race. But hey, it's a game. The 2 local teams for that Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee area, Cincinnati to the Northwest and Atlanta to the Southeast. The radio networks we have long, both beamed into that area.
Right.
So a lot of local fans who have allegiances one way or the other. A lot of folks will come in from outside to be a part of this, a unique environment. So, and yeah, I mean, you mentioned Andrew Abbott. He's a guy that I've been hearing about since he was in high school. Jerry Ratcliffe, one of our colleagues, and I got to interview Andrew right after he got drafted by the Reds organization back in 2021. Amazing that in just 4 years he goes from being drafted to the All-Star game. So, feel like he's one of our guys in that respect. Glad to see him finally getting that recognition he got. So,
if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he picked to be a relief pitcher mostly for Cincinnati, and then they've kind of moved him into this thing, and he ended up being the starter out of it this past season?
he was for the first 3 years he pitched at UVA. He was a relief pitcher and a very good one. Then his senior season, he converted to a starting pitcher. He was the ace of the staff of a UVA team that went to the College World Series, made a surprising run of the College World Series that year. And the Reds ended up converting him to a starter and leaving him there through the minors. And his record's something like I think he's 7-1 with a 2.05 ERA right now. He has just been lights out. Another of our colleagues, Scott German, wrote a column about him being named the All-Star team this week. And Andrew's first couple of seasons in the bigs, he was a solid pitcher then too, not quite All-Star quality. But apparently he worked over the offseason on his release point on his pitches, and altering it by just a couple of inches has changed the movement of his fastball and his slider in particular. And he's gone from really good to elite this season. Yeah. So, boy, just great to see and hear from hear how well he's doing. And hey, if we're lucky, Rod, because you're going to be there. Andrew Abbott could start there in front of 100,000 people.
That would be great to see that too.
And he's a native of the South Boston area, Halifax County area. So he's a sort of local boy, just from a couple hours away. So I'd imagine that if he were to be in the rotation, if his turn comes up around that time, he may have quite a few people in the house there that evening. So. Any case, that's exciting. And, exciting that you'll be there as well. So
I would make a bet that Francona may pitch him. That's just my leaning toward that because, I mean, it's kind of the hometown thing
Yeah.
like you mentioned, and so forth. And it's kind of, the best of both worlds between Atlanta and Cincinnati. And then here he is, South Boston. And, another thing going with this too, I can't believe the great promotional things that the NASCAR drivers have been involved with this Speedway Classic. Some of these guys been going to New York. They've been featured on Fox. With the news and everything, talking about the Speedway Classic, and people are like, "Hey, this must be some serious thing that's going on down at Bristol Motor Speedway." And everybody's just making the big deal about it, that it's a baseball game played inside of a racetrack, which is known as the last great Coliseum. And I think it's just going to be a fantastic event.
Looking forward to it. Still 3 weeks away. Well, let's shift back now to the track. And this past weekend on Sunday, Chicago street race. Ron, for the first time in the 3 year history, and that may be it. This was the third year of a 3 year contract to do this, but we at least got a race in without rain. Now there were clouds. There were, in fact,
Right.
it was interesting to turn on. I watched very closely the last 20 laps of the race, and as the cameras would pan out sometimes and show the skyline of Chicago, you would see those that fog was
That
pretty low.
fog.
Because you see skyscrapers in the background, you see that fog down there. It's like, whoa, that rain's not far off, but it held off. We had a dry race, and Shane van Gisbergen, 2 times out of 3, he wins this race, and he dominated. At least the last portion of the race,
Hmm.
he had a pretty solid lead, and didn't let the other guys get close. Tell us how this all went down.
Well, I think it just went down more than anything else. There's some NASCAR drivers right now that are starting to, I think, sit up and take notice that this may be probably the best road course racer that NASCAR has seen in a long, long time. And he's not even American. He comes from New Zealand. Here he is. He's now the winningest foreign driver on NASCAR races in the world. So that's a big shot in the arm for him. But for him, I think it was patience. I think more than anything else, it wasn't a thing of I've got to get to the front. I've got to get to the front. I've got to wreck so many to get to the front. It was a thing of he made moves on some of these drivers that some people might say they could have been video game moves, just the way it is on, Grand Theft Auto or whatever you want to call it. He was making some moves that I think some of the NASCAR drivers just didn't expect to see out of him. And so he wins the race. We have controversy with it because Cody Ware's car slams into a tire barrier there when the caution comes out. The car is at full speed when it hits. He comes out okay, but they're still not saying a whole lot about what happened with that incident there at Chicago on Sunday. And then we also we would not have anything without Ross Chastain and Joey Logano getting into it, and verbally Joey Logano just plastering Ross Chastain there at the end of the race, and Ross Chastain just grinning at Joey Logano, not raising a hand up to strike at him or anything else. He's just smiling, got that watermelon man smile. That's what they call him. And you had that. Then you also had the controversy right now that people are still talking about. Why didn't they throw some kind of a penalty? Why didn't they penalize the drivers of Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace? Now, Bubba Wallace claims, hey, it's over. No love lost. That's the way he kind of feels about it with Alex Bowman. If you heard some of the radio transmissions on Sunday, it was pretty rough on Alex Bowman's part of what they were telling him. Said, don't let this MF get by us and all this other stuff. It was a fight to the finish with these, and Bubba Wallace eventually just spun around, and then Alex Bowman went on and finished the race. But Bubba finished the race. I think he did finish top 10, but still, it wasn't a good show for him because they were beating and banging. I just didn't expect to see that in that street race. I expected a little bit of finesse, especially the driving, and Van Gisbergen just doing a great job. But you had some people that showed up in the top 10. Kyle Busch was one of them. He rebounded back from a not so good performance there where he slid and spun there at the beginning of the race, and he managed to rebound back. And Catherine Legg, what a great performance for her. First time a woman driver has qualified within, I think, the top 20 since 2017, and Danica Patrick, and that was at Texas when that happened. So, it was a great finish for her. Maybe she's, like she said in post-race comments, maybe this is the monkey I've gotten off my back now. I'm hoping that that's what it is. And I think there's a lot of people hoping that she'll be able to race and contend. I think she's going to Sonoma too. So we'll have to find out how things are going to go this weekend. And like I said, they're going to wine country. They're going to the road course out in Sonoma. And Van Gisbergen is favored again in this one. And so we'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen.
Yeah, let's go ahead and shift there then. Sonoma, what can we look forward to? You've kind of already alluded to some of your thinking on this race this weekend.
I think there's going to be a lot of the regular NASCAR drivers that are going to be probably out for blood. That's me. I just think that they feel like this is the second time Van Gisbergen has shown them up. And I mean, he has really, I think more than anything else, taken them to the woodshed on both events, the Chicago race, the first Chicago race, and this last one. I know he had problems last year and so forth with the Chicago race, the second race, but Sonoma kind of gets them back to a road course that they're used to. Some of these drivers are used to a little bit more. So we'll just have to wait and see. I really wouldn't rule out Kyle Larson out of this. Kyle Larson has had what I feel like has been a dreadful several weeks here racing. He's not had good luck whatsoever, and he needs a good finish this time around. Kyle Busch needs another great performance out of this one because he and Bubba Wallace are teetering right now on that playoff line, and Bubba Wallace has to have a good performance too here in the next couple of weeks, or at least pull off a win. Both of those guys have to pull off a win if they're going to get in contention. Now, the big question is, wonder what Richard Petty's thinking about this whole thing now that Shane van Gisbergen has won a second, well, I call it an elite race here with the Chicago race. And you mentioned earlier, too, about Chicago. It might be the end of it. There was talk I read this morning that Chicago might have the street race back if they can change the date.
Okay.
So now I don't know about that. That's one thing that Chicago, the city, is talking about. They would like to have it back, but it's a matter of changing the dates. They're wanting to get the dates changed. And I know that also the other thing that's kind of circling around with that, a lot of the drivers want to go to Chicagoland. There's some of them want to go to Chicagoland, which is outside of Chicago in Joliet, Illinois, and they want to race there. But I don't know if NASCAR is going to do that or not. I think what's going to really end up happening, I'm seeing a movement now. I'm beginning to wonder if some way, somehow, you have Chicago and Daytona swap dates, and then you end up having Daytona back where it belongs, right around the 4th of July weekend or that time right after 4th of July, and we see the race come back to Daytona because there's a lot of fans out there that feel like they've been gypped out of this whole thing. That's just tradition. You race on 4th of July weekend, you race at Daytona. That's the way it's always been. And I was going through some old video the other night of Tony Stewart. He said something about I know it's the Pepsi 400 or the Firecracker 400 and stuff, but he said, I'll tell you right now, it may be sponsored by Pepsi, but he said, I'll tell you, Coca-Cola drinks a hell of a lot better than Pepsi. That's what he said in the comment. I was just like, okay, Tony, you're one of those people that just says what's on your mind. And that's what he did in the video. And I was kind of caught off guard by it. I'd forgot it even happened, but he had won a race there several years ago. And that was his reaction after he got out of the car. He said, that's when Pepsi, I guess Pepsi eventually they dropped that sponsorship and they've scaled back now. And well, I guess, putting some more business news in there. Now we're seeing why they are the fourth top cola in the United States right now because they're not promoting themselves. They're not getting involved with things like they used to be, and especially with NASCAR. So Coca-Cola is riding them to the bank on this one.
I have to agree with Tony Stewart, and Crystal Graham would also endorse. Not a fan of the Pepsi, so.
Mhm.
Well, Rod, as always, thank you for your time, your insight. We look forward to talking to you again next week.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.